Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Another hearing, number 4 of the January 6th committee hearings, and by far, in my view, the most compelling of the hearings. One jaw-dropping one-liner after another, dagger after dagger in the heart of the failed coup. Trump not happy. Trump very unhappy. In fact, went after the Arizona Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, just before Bowers was to testify. Trump accused him of being a rhino, which, if you know anything about this guy, not a rhino. This guy is ideological way right. This is not, I know everyone's saying, oh, he's a hero, he's great, oh, he's amazing. No. This guy way out there. Just happens to be that he has a bit of integrity in, maybe the oath of office thing, kind of important. But Trump, came out and said that, Bowers told him that that the election was rigged and that Trump won. Evidently in some delusional conversation that Trump had with this guy. Just made it up. Now, interestingly enough, the conversations that you heard today, and I was waiting for the perfect, the beautiful phone call, the one between Trump and Brad Raffensperger. I couldn't get past. And we've all heard it. Trump wanted Raffensperger to find, whatever find means, to find 11,800 votes, because he needs one more. But he went into this rant about how, I know I've won by 400,000 votes. And my thought is, well, here's the thing. This is where the delusion comes in. I only need 11,800. But if you're claiming you won by 400,000, why aren't you asking for 400,000? I mean, if they're there, and they're there, and the proof is supposedly somewhere there, why aren't you asking for what you're rightfully entitled to? Look, I've argued grievances, and I've done things in the past where I've gone, I feel cheated. I've wanted what I've been entitled to. So if Trump truly believed this, and this just wasn't a power grab, a delusional power grab, why isn't he calling for the 400,000 votes that he seems to think he believes he won by? Now, look, Bowers, by far, in my view, the most compelling of witnesses, probably one of the most compelling witnesses ever in a congressional hearing. I mean, he was authentic. He was emotional. I thought at one point he was going to burst into tears. Steal a Bill Clinton line. You could feel his pain. And look, not a great guy. I'm not going there. I know everyone's no, he's a hero. No. He stood up in a moment where millions of Americans of the past have done. He stood on his principle, he stood on his oath, he stood on his word. Only now in this era of Trump is that really an amazing feat, I think. I go back to my grandparents' generation. One of the things my grandfather instilled in me is, you got two things in this world. And every man knows this. You got your boys and you got your word. And you don't break either one of them. And your word being the most important thing. You never break your word. And a true test of someone's character is what they do in that moment when their word is in jeopardy. When they can't keep their word or someone's attacking them. This guy, I give him credit. He deserves the credit that he deserves. In this moment, he stood his ground and stood his word. I'll give him that. Same thing with Raffensperger. Same thing with Gabriel Sterling. Look, overwhelming. I can't imagine the pressure these people were under. And the stories that they told, look, these are Republicans getting beat up by Republicans. And oddly enough, here's something else that caught my attention. And I want to hear your thoughts too. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. I found it interesting that a number of people quoted scripture, talked about religion, in this context of faith and religiosity. Yet these are the same evangelical type minds that said, Trump was our guy, that they could forgive all of the sins of the Trump, that, God sent him to us. I still remember someone telling me the story, and it's a really bizarre, how, God sent a person on a rowboat to save somebody and you sent him away because he wasn't perfect. And, God sent somebody else to rescue you in another situation, but that person wasn't perfect, but they were sent anyway. And, Trump's not perfect, but he's who was sent. He was the vessel of our Savior. Not so much. I just find it interesting that this is where we've gotten. Now, I listened to Sterling, Gabriel Sterling, tell his story. He was an election official in Georgia, going, look, there's no fact here. Stop. There's no evidence that there's fraud. There's none of the stuff that you're saying is true. His quote was, it's kind of like a shovel trying to empty the ocean. It was frustrating. I even have family members who I had to argue with about some of the things. I show them things, and the problem you have is you're getting to people's hearts. Once you get past the heart, the facts don't matter as much. And this is where things are. People have vested in Trump well beyond reason. And I've never believed that much in any politician that some of my Trump supporter friends have put into a guy who's always been viewed as a con man. And I guess that's the greatest con of all. You look at all of these people around him that bought it. Absolutely bought it. I mean, it's remarkable. And what I found most interesting, and what I as I'm watching these hearings, what I'm finding even more interesting is the two different faces, the Janus face of the Republican. I look at Ronna McDaniel. For those who don't know, Ronna is the chairwoman of the RNC. Publicly, she's, all Team Trump. Publicly, she's all, Team GOP, pushing the line, pushing the corporate line, all of that. But in her testimony, what we saw, she threw Trump right under the bus. There's no way that there's any deniability by Trump at this moment that he didn't know that the fake electors were happening, because she put him directly in the middle of introducing her to John Eastman. There is no gray area. There is a direct line from Eastman to Trump to McDaniel. There's no gray area. This is it. So, I look at this and I'm going, but hold on, but I remember, her, the company line, it's all rigged, it's all this, it's all that. But, when she was under oath, all a different scenario. Same thing with the daughter. Ivanka evidently was interviewed. Here's another beautiful thing. Our former TV president actually had a documentary crew following him around the last 6 weeks that nobody knew about. Evidently, none of the inner circle realized that there was a crew following. And I don't know how you don't know. Now, look, I know that there's always an entourage following the president. There are cameras everywhere. But how do you not know in intimate settings that there's a strange guy over here with a camera recording everything, who has access that nobody else has? But evidently, this guy interviewed Ivanka Trump, who basically told an entirely different view to this filmmaker that she told under oath. And this again, as I've been saying all along, is the fascinating part of putting your hand on that book and saying, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me, God. Because the person with the robe can throw your behind in jail. I just find it quite interesting how that worked. And the number of people throwing the Trump under the bus. And look, even the F channel is now going, well, there's some voices over there going, well, maybe he did commit a crime. Oops. There's going to be a pivot. It's going to happen very soon because these hearings, for all of the MAGA, there's nothing here, nothing to see, move along. For all of the Jim Jordans, nobody's paying attention. People are paying attention. When they're saying nobody's paying attention, people are paying attention. And there's going to be a pivot. And that pivot is going to be turning on Trump. And that is going to be fairly entertaining because it'll be interesting to watch him then just go full on scorched earth. Now, another interesting story that came out, and this is still developing, I understand. Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, it's being reported that evidently a package was delivered to his office. It had the fake elector forms in there that evidently his staffers were going to hand deliver to Mike Pence. There was some talk of that maybe Ron Johnson was going to take it and hand deliver it. Pence's office said, no, don't. It didn't happen. Ron Johnson is running away from this as fast as humanly possible, trying to claim, no, I didn't know anything. I wouldn't do it. I don't know what I believe in there. I've heard Ron Johnson speak. I got to tell you, don't believe a word of it. He was eyeball deep in all of this. Going to be interesting to see where this goes. Now, again, the one-liners were plentiful. Benny Thompson, the chairman, said, the lie hasn't gone away. It's corrupting our democratic institutions. And he pointed out, look, you got a bunch of these people who have committed to the big lie, who have internalized the big lie, who are living the big lie. Oh, no, it's that the election was stolen. Now running for positions of power that they could do what Trump wanted. All of these Republicans, line them all up. Raffensperger, Bowers, Pence, all of these people, all of these witnesses to do what Trump wanted to do. And the chaos that could come out of that, it's crazy. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said we didn't see any evidence of fraud in the Fulton County episode. Like it's a TV drama. I guess this is where we've gone. Liz Cheney said each of these efforts to overturn the election is independently serious. Each deserves attention by both Congress and the Department of Justice. Hey, Merrick Garland. Where are you, Merrick? It's time. It's time. It's time to start looking at this because Adam Schiff was right. The system held, but barely. The next time around, the question is, does it hold? Now, there were a couple of lines that really caught the attention. Speaker Bauer said, I don't want to be a winner by cheating. And I think a lot of people, grabbed onto that. He said also that this is a tragic parody. But one of my favorite lines was something that evidently Rudy Giuliani told Bowers. We've got a lot of theories. We just don't have the evidence. And if we were going to sum up this entire hearing, I think that's it. We've got a lot of theories. We just haven't concocted enough evidence yet. Interesting day. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you paid attention, if you watched, do you agree with me? Was this the most compelling of the four? I just found it fascinating. The phone calls, the audio, something to be desired. You figure, they'd have better than that. But I thought today was bombshells. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425 if you want to weigh in on what you thought of the hearing. And really, should we be looking at not just criminal charges for Trump, but start looking at some of these other co-conspirators? The Eastman looking for a pardon even then. Some of the Congress people. Interesting. Quick break. Right back after this. If you're you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Donald applauded the Texas Republicans. They've got a platform. They do. Hey, look, here's the thing. I guess at a certain level, you got to give credit to the Texas Republicans. At least they have a platform, as where the National Republican Party, not so much. They just said whatever Donald wants. Whatever King Lear wants. That's where we'll go. Now, he was clearly praising the Republicans in Texas for their position that Joe Biden was not legitimately elected. That plays into his frame, makes him very happy. But here's the scary part about their platform. One of the little tenets in there, and get ready for this, and we'll probably talk a lot about this in the coming days. They want to move to a state level, like an electoral college kind of voting scheme. Because what they realize their stranglehold on the state of Texas is probably going to go away, that it's becoming more democratic, and they're probably going to have to start competing with actual ideas, and that their hate and their division and all of the things that they've been doing not really going to be very saleable in the coming years. So they've got to figure out how to, well, gerrymander and, well, make those votes not really count. Yay. And look, this is going to start in Texas. I can see that coming to Pennsylvania as they can't win statewide elections here. This is a great way to use that gerrymandering power. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we today?
We're okay. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind? Did you watch the big hearing?
Yes, I did. We watched most of it, and my husband and I were just sitting there shaking our heads because, you know, they're sitting here naming names, and they've got the evidence right there, and it's like, when are we going to start hauling people up and locking them up? You know, and I'm telling my husband, I said, well, you know, last night, Bob Ney and you talking about, you know, the fake electors, and I was telling my husband, I said, I know for a fact because one of the men who helped write some legislation was on, you know, the Rick Smith show. And my husband's going, so what's the holdup? I'm going, you know, apparently we can't make people cry because they did something bad. I don't know. But I think everyone that's got any sense, which is probably about 70% of us that's watching the hearings, we are sick of seeing these people have nothing happen to them when they've done something that's illegal, and they do it over and over. And again, as for the dingbats in Texas, and I still have relatives down there, you know, they're just insane. And it's like, what makes you think that once you do that, that we're going to let you keep all the, you know, the forts and that all the companies down there are going to stay? Because I don't think they are. It's, you just got to shake your head and go, oh my God. In fact, my neighbor across the street, that's the evangelical, she and I were kind of sort of talking today, and you got to dance around easy with her. But she was saying, you know, Reagan did not do anyone any favors when he got closed all the mental hospitals. There seems to be a lot of crazy people, and I said, you have never spoke truer words. So
there's truth
I
there.
don't know.
I'm right there with you.
Yep.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate
so you
it.
have a good evening.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm right there. We've got a lot of mental health issues. Most certainly need to be working on this. But I look at this move toward an electoral college scenario. This is the way that the rural communities have figured out how to dominate the cities, the urbans, and this is the next fight in this. This is like a state like Pennsylvania, where you're going to gerrymander things in a way that statewide elections then start going the other way. Get ready for this kind of a mentality to be in other states, if they can do it. Now, again, who knows with our crazy Supreme Court? Who knows? For instance, there was a 7-2 decision today that evidently the court decided that a conviction for attempted robbery under the Federal Hobbs Act, which again gets into a whole bunch of different things. It's a definition of a crime of violence. But evidently, just by having the gun now isn't now considered a violent crime to trigger this enhanced sentencing. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, is this about the gun now? I mean, are we backing off of that? Dangerous waters, in my view. But scary. Also, Supreme Court decided that they're going to be able to use taxpayer dollars to fund religious schools. That's kind of new. And as I said earlier today, this is the wet dream of God Incorporated. Because if they can get their hands into the education money, this is, oh my gosh, this is a game changer for them. This is how they finish off public education. Because I actually know people who their game plan is, the big plan is to make sure that dollars are attached to students, that every student is worth X amount of dollars. This is what the charter movement has done masterfully, that each student's worth 10 grand so that they can get the head in the door, cha-ching, 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 10 grand, 10 grand, 10 grand. Where the religious community wants to take the homeschool folks, their goal is to go, no. What we want to do is we want to start our own church schools. We want to start our own these schools, and then each of our own kids, we get 10 grand. So we got 4 kids. We make 40 grand a year educating our own kids, and the state's going to then pay us for this. That's the goal. And this is, I think, a step in moving in that direction. At the end of the day, this is another step towards destroying public education, of which I think is vital to our community. And as you know, I'm someone who believes in community. I think what's happened over the last 40 years, she brought up Reagan a minute ago. One of the great disasters of the Reagan Revolution was he tore us apart. This idea that we're all hyper individuals and we're all, you're on your own. The one who with the most toys when they die wins. Greed is good. That ripped our communities and ripped us apart. We need things that are going to pull us back together. We need things that are going to make us one again, make us a nation again. Not more ripping and shredding and hyper individualism. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got lots to get to. If you miss any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts, make sure you check that out. Like, share, subscribe, make a comment or two. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis issued strike orders at the nation's mines, calling out more than 500,000 miners. The third general coal strike in 3 months defied the wartime no-strike pledge. Miners raised several demands, including wage increases, an end to the dangerous third shift, and portal-to-portal pay. High wartime inflation only worsened miners' already low wages. Early that spring, Lewis denounced the mine owners, the War Labor Board, and the Little Steel formula used to calculate wartime wages. He warned the formula meant starvation for workers and the end of collective bargaining. By April, President Roosevelt had ordered wage freezes. Miners began walking out of the pits even before the strike call, as soon as the War Labor Board handed down their decision on June 19th. the board had rejected all of the miners' demands. The United Mine Workers responded stating, quote, "No member and no officer of the United Mine Workers of America would be so destitute of principle and so devoid of honor as to sign or execute such an infamous yellow dog contract." Though the United Mine Workers were forced to call off the strike the next day, some miners continued to stay out in protest. 4 days later, Congress passed the dreaded Smith-Conley Act, dubbed the Slave Labor Bill, in response to the strike. Throughout the summer, miners across the country would rage against the government for threatening them with conscription and jail time if they dared refuse the terms of the decision. By November, the miners would walk out a fourth time and finally win many of their demands, at least from the War Labor Board. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Right before our eyes, an invaluable American species is fast disappearing from view. Cartoonus americanus. These are newspaper cartoonists who've long delighted readers and infuriated power elites. And there's nothing natural about their sudden decline. It's not the result of a dwindling talent pool and certainly not due to a lack of political targets. Rather, what's happening is that their media habitat is being intentionally destroyed. Around the start of the 20th century, some 2,000 newspapers featured their own full-time cartoonists. But in just the last decade, those healthy media environments have shriveled. So now, only a couple of dozen newspapers have these vibrant artistic journalists on staff. One major reason is that most U.S. papers have been gobbled up by profiteering hedge funds that have merged, purged, and plundered these essential local sources of news and democratic discourse. The overriding interest of these Wall Street owners is to cash out a paper's financial assets and haul off the booty to boost their personal wealth. Journalism and democracy be damned. Thus, they view cartoonists as a paycheck that can be easily diverted into their corporate pockets, dismissing the fact that enjoying good local cartoonists ranks as one of the top reasons people give for buying the paper. Note that this mass extermination is not old-school media censorship, but sleight-of-hand money censorship by the new monopolistic order of newspapering. Political cartoonists are still free to express any opinion they want, but the Wall Street system locks them out of their primary marketplace. Censorship is ugly, but eliminating paychecks, well, that's just business. This is Jim Hightower saying, yet these freewheeling spirits of the cartooning craft are inventing new ways to connect with America's strong demand for their fun and important work. To connect with them, go to editorialcartoonist.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I'm looking at this Rick Scott. Oh, the entitlement. Oh, the privilege of Mr. Scott. The Florida senator who's worth about $250 million. Evidently, he recently introduced a plan to raise taxes on you, me, the working class of the country, while ensuring that he and his wealthy ilk, their tax cuts are permanent. This is the same guy who wants to gut Social Security, same guy who wants to kick poor people off of food stamps. Evidently just said that Americans are the most spoiled people on earth. Yeah, evidently. This from the guy who oversaw the largest Medicare fraud in the history of the country while he was CEO of Columbia HCA. Do you feel spoiled? Wow, we're in very, very bizarre times. Anyway, good news today. The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act evidently went into effect today. The question is how will the Biden administration, how will they enforce that? And here to share some thoughts on how we ensure that it is enforced properly and how we take on what's going on with China right now. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, americanmanufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is great to be with you tonight.
So walk me through, what is this Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act and why should we care about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you teed this up perfectly with Rick Scott. So, ironically, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act came about as the result of Marco Rubio, Republican from Florida, Jim McGovern, a progressive Democrat from Massachusetts, a lot of human rights groups, the labor community, we fought for it. It's one of those rare things, and you know this, that how rare it is to see something passed unanimously. I think maybe Rand Paul opposed it. He opposes everything, as you know, but extraordinarily, this passed the Congress almost unanimously. And here's what it does. Here's why it's important. The Uyghurs are a Muslim ethnic population in Western China. Chinese Communist Party has systematically over the last 20 years tried to decimate Uyghur culture, obviously their faith tradition. And it's done this through means that the United States and others have called a genocide. Because it's not only just trying to destroy the culture, there's also sterilization, there's internment, there's harassment of Uyghurs abroad, and there is a massive program of forced labor where Uyghurs are put into large, what they will call dormitory facilities, which are prisons essentially, and then sent to the shop floor. And they are making some of the products that Americans consume, mostly unknowingly, right? So if you buy an imported shirt, there is a pretty reasonable chance that cotton from Xinjiang is in that shirt, and that it was produced or processed in some part by Uyghur forced labor. Same with some types of processed tomato products. Same with some types of materials that go into solar panels that are installed. Same as goes for a lot of the rare earth minerals that end up in lithium ion batteries that we use not only for electric vehicles, but for a lot of things these days, Rick. And so if the idea of forced labor is abhorrent to you or genocide, and it is to me, I imagine it is to everybody, then we should be banning goods that are coming from that region that are, the odds are really good that they were made with forced labor. And so there's a law that banned it. It went into effect today. It's going to change the business model, or it should, for a lot of companies, but it's also exposed, a lot of other issues. And you have like these fast fashion brands that are, that are very concerned about how it's going to be implemented, because, their business model leans heavily on that kind of exploitation. So that's, let's celebrate the fact that we got something done.
Yeah.
But we also, the fact that we had to do something is really mind-boggling, and then we got to make sure that it has teeth, that we're actually following through on this.
Yeah, it's one thing to actually to get this passed, and the whole other thing to actually do something, because hey, inflation. We'd love to do something about it, but inflation.
Yeah. I mean, and that's certainly an argument that some of the importers will make. And I'll say, they've been very crafty about this, Rick, because no one wants to say, yeah, we like forced labor. I mean, they can't get away with saying that. So, they'll use very, very intentional phrasing of things about let's partner on this. Let's phase this in. Let's give us the benefit of the doubt if we prove one shipment, and then the rest will be fine, right?
I love corporate
we want to work
speak.
with you on this. So it's a lot of double speak, right? And exactly. And we're saying, look, none of these guys deserve the benefit of the doubt because they've been exploiting the system. They've known about it. They've certainly know about it. There's no possible way they didn't know about it. They just didn't care.
No, and there's no way I can trust the Chinese Communist Party to ever tell the truth. I don't even know that I don't even know trust but verify is even. I just don't ever trust.
Yeah. Well, you're right. In general, I think it's very hard to do that. specifically with respect to this region, there's no international monitoring that's even allowed now. So we couldn't even, we couldn't even tell, right? If they're, it's, and so the approach of the human rights groups has been to say, look, we have to assume the worst here.
Yeah.
Because we've seen documentation of a lot of the worst, and we can't get them in there every day. And so companies should adopt the same policy. They should just leave. They should find another source.
Listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website, if you want to check out the work that they do. If you got a question, comment, thought, something for Scott, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Would you buy something that you knew was had forced labor in it, slave labor, something that someone was put in this situation over? I'd like to hear it. But I'm looking at this, and we're in a moment, Scott, where, China becoming much more muscular. They just put out a new aircraft carrier, I guess it is, a new defense vehicle, whatever you want to call it, an aircraft carrier, right? State-of-the-art kind of thing. Becoming much more muscular in surveillance. I mean,
right.
The surveillance state is just, oh my gosh, every bit of data being collected, every step being monitored. The brave new world, not great.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of concerning actions. And let's be clear, our government has surveilled in the past in ways that were, not lawful, and they've been held to account for that. The difference is we have the ability to change the government at the ballot box. Chinese people do not. And here's what's happening. And first, you mentioned the military buildup. It's concerning. I mean, China has the largest navy in the world now, and it's declared the maritime region between Taiwan and China to be not international, to be essentially all Chinese waters, and that raises serious concerns. This reminds me a lot of Putin's steps, right? Starting with in Georgia and in Crimea, and now in Ukraine, of like this creeping like territorialism that leads to conflict. So that's concerning internally, and I think this is important. The New York Times has done an extensive amount of research on this, that the amount of data, the amount of video footage, the amount of artificial intelligence that goes into this, the amount of facial recognition tools and other sorts of biometric data that the Chinese Communist Party, the government uses, is astounding. It's really unbelievable. And it gives the Chinese Communist Party an additional tool of repression for anyone who dares to disagree with it, basically. There's nowhere to hide, literally, now. And it's problematic for a couple of reasons. First of all, the U.S. either handed or through theft, aided and abetted in the development of a lot of this technology. I mean, it's been taken over by Chinese national companies now, and I'm not alleging or that Apple or Google or anybody like that is involved in this scheme, but certainly the fact that they had a presence in China and some of their technology was utilized for this. I think that's the angle there, but it is super concerning because this means that China, that the party is going to extend its reach further into China and look for this surveillance technique to be used against Chinese citizens abroad and others who happen to disagree with it, like Uyghur dissidents or others who are in the United States. And so we have to think very carefully about how we approach this and what kind of sanctions are necessary. And still also the need to speak out.
Yeah. No, see, I'm in this position, Scott, where right now we've got to decide which way we're going as a country and which way we're going as a globe, because there is a Cold War going on right now. I just don't think most Americans get it. We're so divided internally that I don't think we're paying attention to what's going on internationally. And the Chinese, as you've pointed out, are growing much more muscular. They view themselves as the leader for the next 100 years or on beyond that. And they are gaining the tools to take that control. We have a brief window. And I know people right now are going, well, inflation's high. We need to do things to lower gas prices and make life easier here. But hey, things are bad internationally. I have someone who keeps emailing me every day. Why isn't Joe Biden getting rid of the tariffs? I'm going, well, because this would not be great with our relations with China. It's going to continue to exacerbate our manufacturing problems. There's so many things that we should be doing outside of this other than making China stronger. I guess. Let me ask you that: should we be doing away with these tariffs?
Yeah, the answer to that, Rick, is no. There are tariffs in place against hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese imports. They're there for a reason because China has cheated the international trade system, and as you pointed out, a lot of these practices have cost us jobs, have cost us technology, have devastated entire communities, and there ought to be some economic leverage that's employed either to get the Chinese Communist Party to change its behavior or to encourage firms to get out of there and find other sources for these products for consumers in the United States. And if you take these tariffs away, you lose that bit of leverage. But here's the other thing. Even the most wildly optimistic scenario about the impact of eliminating these tariffs on inflation is basically a rounding error. It doesn't even get to 1%. Right? I mean, it's not even close. It's closer to 0% than 1%. And we lose an extraordinary amount of leverage. And I'll just add that, a National Retail Federation spokesperson, which favors lifting the tariffs, even said, you know what, I don't know if consumers are going to see any impact at the end of this. So there you have it. I mean, their motivation is to make more profit, and they certainly will make more profit if the tariffs go away. But consumers aren't going to see it. This isn't going to help with gas prices. It's not going to help with food prices. It's not going to help with airline tickets. It's not going to help with home prices. It's not going to help with used car prices. It's not going to help with new car prices. There is nothing you can name in the leading drivers of inflation right now where this is going to help a single bit. So it would be a huge mistake for this administration to unilaterally withdraw the tariffs at this time or at any time until we have a plan B on how to structure our economy so that we can create jobs here or find other sources for some of these products.
Is there a plan B? I mean, I'm looking at this, and I'm sadly, and we've been talking about this for years. This isn't new. Yeah. We are on this path to where we've given away our manufacturing prowess. I mean, we were the leader, the global leader in manufacturing for 100 years, and we handed that away. Right. That was not something, there wasn't a competition. We didn't lose a fight. We handed it off for more profits for big corporations to hand out to their shareholders and their CEOs. Yeah. This wasn't a fair fight. This was a here, take it. We get to have cheap labor and lax environmental regulations. Yeah. Now we're looking down the barrel of a changed globe, not just here at home, but all around the world, a surveillance state globe. I got to tell you, I'm not thrilled with the prospect for my children.
I understand, and there's a lot of things to be concerned about, from the political climate in the United States to the global climate and the way in which it's changing, to this development of a more authoritarian and muscular kind of opposition. I mean, all of this is deeply concerning. I will say, I do think we have a plan B. I think it a lot of it has to do with investment at home to make sure that we're competitive and to have the capacity to do that. I think this administration does understand that. I still think that we're so afraid of scale here, Rick. And I'll just give you an example. We're quibbling right now over $50 billion to revitalize the semiconductor industry and other technology industries in the United States, something that we would need to accomplish this, right? China is proceeding with $150 billion in incentives for semiconductor production. And it'll just do it, right? And I'm not saying we should be like China that way at all, but we need to get our act together here, and we need to do this, and we need to do it in a way that's going to create jobs, because I do want to see Intel come to Ohio, and I want to see all these other investments made. I think it's very, very important. So there's a plan. Whether we can scale it up enough or do it quickly enough, I mean, that's a question that we haven't answered yet. Right?
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, and maybe we start by banning any of the things that come into this country, and use this Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act as the rationale for banning anything right there and then. At least that's my thought. But Scott, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Rick, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can check out that stuff there. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment? Give us a call. Also, if you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I got an email, someone flipping their mind, sent me this story by David Sirota, who points out that the Biden team has appointed or nominated this guy Andrew Biggs, who not someone I'm fond of, someone I met a number of years back here in Pennsylvania when we were going through some pension issues at the state level. They brought him in, the right wing brought him in as the great destroyer. He was with the American Enterprise Institute. The idea that we privatize everything and, well, no pensions for workers, screw them. He has been put, and this is just, it blew my mind when I got sent the article and questioned why Joe Biden would nominate this person to sit on this pretty key board that oversees Social Security and Medicare. because this guy is truly a hater of the program. Someone who clearly would want to see it privatized. But this bipartisan Social Security Advisory Board, I guess, was started back in '94 to consult the president and Congress about Social Security and the system and all the health of it. Evidently, there has to be a Republican on it. So this is why they chose this guy. I have no idea. I think he's terrible. I think this is probably the worst choice you could have made. But this is where they've gone. So when the person sent me this, my first reaction is, this has to be a mistake. It has to be a joke. Then part of me goes, well, wait a second. This is probably who a Republican put forth. There's part of a deal going on. This is probably a trade thing going on. And Republicans are moving to, want to cut and gut Social Security, because you look at the Rick Scott plan. Scott wants to gut Social Security. This has been their wet dream for decades. They have wanted to privatize that Social Security money. You go back to the Bush years, where they almost did. And boy, aren't you glad they didn't? You think about the massive collapse in 2008. You think about the massive, Wall Street downturns that could have just eviscerated your Social Security, especially if you're at that retirement age. But having people like this on those boards, kind of concerning to me. Now, these are people who want to raise the Social Security retirement age. These are people who want to diminish the benefit, do away with the cost of living adjustment. These are people who, seriously, there should be no security in old age. I'm one of the people who believe the three-legged stool. The old FDR three-legged stool. You get a little bit of Social Security, a little bit defined benefit pension, which I know is no longer something that happens in this country, and your savings. The money that you squirrel away through when you're working, however you do that through, 401k, IRA, basic savings account, or maybe a tin can in the backyard. I don't know. But you have that solid three-legged stool. Sadly, over the last 40 years, what you've seen is, the wages haven't kept up with inflation. People are struggling to get by. So one of the legs has been sawed off and taken away, your ability to save a little bit of money. The defined benefit pension has been totally eviscerated. Corporate America has stolen that and given you these wonderful defined contribution plans. How are those working out? Sadly, for the vast majority of people, not so well. And then there's Social Security, and they want to whittle that down. Why? So they can keep you desperate. So they can keep people working till the day they die. Because no one should enjoy their golden years. No one should enjoy a retirement, evidently. This is the world conservatives want to take us to. Now they'll say, but Rick, no, if you were responsible your whole life and you saved. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. You should be saving. You should be putting money into a retirement account. My 16-year-old has a retirement account. We set that up from the day he got his first job. Same thing with my oldest child. And we'll do it for my youngest one. The second you get a job, you start squirreling a little bit of money away, so that when you get to retirement age, you're going to have something. But that doesn't mean you forego all else. It doesn't mean you get to destroy Social Security. It surely doesn't mean that you get to destroy defined benefit pensions and have no recourse. It's just crazy. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Never miss a moment. Also, I want to hear your thoughts. You got questions? You got comments? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So much going on.
The mercury is rising all across Western Europe.
Extreme heat in Europe smashes records, sparks wildfires, and water rationing. Severe U.S. heat wave killed thousands of cattle. Plus,
madness is coming, and all we can do is try to prepare for it as best we can.
Right-wing Supreme Court majority poised to hand down the most consequential environmental ruling in decades.
All of those consequences and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The things that we're starting to see now become much worse, and we get extremes that we haven't even seen before.
It's going to get worse?
Much worse.
Who asked you? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Tessie Doyen, sweltering heat in Europe, here in the U.S. Cattle dying, people dying. This is not good.
No, it most definitely is not, and it is very unusual. In Europe, an historic heat wave is blanketing Europe from London to the Mediterranean, with temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above normal, shattering all-time temperature records for the month of June and sparking wildfires in Spain, Germany, and France. Southern France hit a record high of 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
The extreme heat is impacting electricity generation in southern France, where several nuclear plants were already offline after widespread corrosion problems were discovered in critical systems. France 24 reports that other nuclear plants have also been forced to curtail output because rivers that are used to cool the nuclear reactors are warming earlier and faster than normal.
So the river water is too hot to cool the nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Not good.
In Italy, the heat and historic drought have triggered a water crisis. Parts of northern Italy have seen no rain for more than 3 months, wilting crops and reducing output from hydroelectric dams. But worse, Italy's largest river, the legendary Po River, is literally drying up. Towns in the north have begun water rationing. But a bit of better news, Europe also set new records for solar power production. In Germany, solar supplied more than 60% of its electricity in the height of the heat wave.
So there's that.
It's the opposite situation in India and Bangladesh, where army troops have been called out to rescue thousands of people stranded by deadly floods. An unusually intense monsoon dumped more than 3 feet of rain in 24 hours.
3 feet of rain in 24 hours?
Yes, nearly 120 people are confirmed killed by floods and landslides as we go to air. Millions of homes are underwater, and this latest round of catastrophic flooding comes less than a month after extreme rainfall submerged entire towns. Studies show that climate change increases the odds of extreme weather events like droughts and deluges. Climate scientists warn that the unusually early arrival of extreme heat is a sign of what is to come with man-made climate change, with temperatures from August moving up the calendar to June.
With what is to come from man-made climate change, I would say it's already here.
Here in the U.S., officials in Kansas say the sudden onset of intense heat last week killed at least 2,000 cattle. In southern Arizona, firefighters have saved the precious telescopes at the Kitt Peak National Observatory from the massive Contreras fire. It's just one of several major fires fueled by the excessive heat and dry conditions in the Southwest. In other news, the American Medical Association has issued a new statement declaring climate change a public health crisis that, quote, threatens the health and well-being of all people.
Good.
The new policy specifically mobilizes the AMA to advocate for policies that limit global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius and will help the U.S. cut emissions to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And finally, a heads up. The right-wing U.S. Supreme Court majority is poised to hand down what could be an incredibly consequential environmental ruling. West Virginia versus EPA is a lawsuit brought by Republican attorneys general over a coal pollution rule that never went into effect. It is a pretext in Republicans' years-long scheme to get the court to strip the EPA of authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. In 2008, the court ruled that the EPA can and must regulate climate pollution, but the new right-wing supermajority may break precedent with long-reaching consequences that could curtail all future pollution regulations. Slate court reporter Mark Joseph Stern on a recent broadcast warned,
how could it possibly be that the Supreme Court will rule on a regulation that does not yet exist, that may in fact never exist? And the answer is that the usual rules about actually taking a live controversy do not seem to apply when the conservative supermajority really wants to kneecap the Biden administration's regulatory agenda.
Right. Nothing has changed except the makeup of the corrupted, stolen, and packed U.S. Supreme Court. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, I'm wondering where is Merrick Garland after today? And like I said, the reality is today for me was the most compelling of all of the hearings. This was the bombs. This was the jaw-dropping stuff. To hear the Arizona speaker talk the way he did. Look, I don't think he's a great guy. I don't think he's any of that stuff. But in this moment, stood his ground, did the right thing. And I'll tell you, I thought he was authentic. I thought he was genuine. And I love the fact that, there was a conversation. It wasn't that. Very, very bizarre. But here to share some thoughts on the hearing. Maybe he's going to agree that this was the most compelling. Maybe there are going to be some indictments. Maybe finally we'll see some perp walking. I'm hoping, been asking for it. That's why I've asked former federal prosecutor and host of the On Topic podcast, Renato Mariotti, to come share some thoughts with us. Renato, thanks for taking time for us.
Absolutely. Anytime, Rick.
So when all this stuff, 4 hearings now of bombshell after bombshell, when do we finally start going, there's a lot of criming going on here. This was what it was. It was a coup attempt. There's criming here. No?
Well, look, it's more complicated than it seems, but I think today we've definitely heard the piece of this puzzle that to me is the most straightforward and the most, it's the closest to what prosecutors usually charge as a crime. And here's what I mean. We heard about the fake elector scheme. I mean, that was really the core of what we heard about today, or a big part of it. And that is just straight up, that is just a very straight up false statement to the federal government. That's what if you remember, a lot of the folks in the Mueller investigation were charged with that. When they were lying to the FBI, Michael Flynn, for example, right? And others, Papadopoulos, they made false statements to the FBI. They went to prison for it, or they paid some, they had to be convicted of a felony for that. This is similar. If you make that document, those fake electoral certificates contained false statements. They said that those electors were duly elected. Some of them even had the names of people who were not Trump electors that cycle. And the people who prepared those documents would have that criminal liability if they knew those statements were false. And similarly, that would go to people who, for example, were involved in causing those statements to be transmitted to the United States Senate and so on. So to me, when I look at this scheme, when I look at all the cast of characters, the people to me that are the weak link in Trump Inc., so to speak, are the lawyers. The crooked ones, not the ones who are saying that you should get a lawyer yourself, but people like John Eastman, and this time, I mean today's testimony, Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, who are telling just flat out lies, and are not. I'm not careful at all. Really not acting like lawyers, acting like propagandists.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. But here's where I keep coming back to. You talked about the fake electors. I keep wondering. Why weren't they arrested on January 7th? If I pass a bad check, they're coming for me. You knew on January 7th that this. You got 2 of them. One was certified, one was not. One was authentic, one was real, one was not. Why has it taken all this time? And then to your point, evidently they were sent. I guess a package was given to Ron Johnson, whether he was going to hand deliver it to Mike Pence or not. How did it get there? And are we now talking, potential wire fraud or, mail fraud? I mean, there's a lot of criming going on.
Well, it's interesting. So you're talking to somebody who prosecuted bank fraud. Prosecuting fraud is not as easy as it sounds. I know people at home are to be mad to hear it. Sad to hear it. But I will just say that what matters is what the challenge always is for prosecutors, proving that the person knew that it was false, proving that they knew that in your example, the check was bad. But usually when it comes to something like you say bank fraud, it's because it's a false statement you're making to a bank, or it's a fault when you say wire and mail fraud, making a false statement. So the question is, I've tried many wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud cases. It always comes down to what does the person have the intent to defraud? Are they telling a lie? Yeah. Do they know it's false? The thing that is the reason that I say the weak links are people like Giuliani and Jenna Ellis. You have them literally coming out and saying there's 400,000 dead people who voted, and they have no evidence to back it up. They admit they have no evidence to back it up. They're sitting in meetings where people are telling them it's illegal. And they should know better as lawyers. These are not just random schlubs who can claim that they just put things in front. They just sign whatever's put in front of them. That's not these guys.
Yeah, what was this?
Giuliani's a lawyer, right?
Yeah, we're led to believe that. What was the statement by Bowers that Giuliani said to him? We've got lots of theories. We just don't have the evidence.
Right, that's quite an admission. But see, Bowers is saying, I wondered if that was like he was confused or not confused, but he was like a moment of he slipped up, because originally what was happening was in front of Trump, Giuliani was saying, we have the evidence. Like Trump's like, get him the evidence of all the dead people voting, and Giuliani's like, okay, we'll do that. Which, by the way, is false, right? He's lying when he says that. And then he admits in a later conversation that they never had the evidence to begin with. So to me, that's the scheme here. When you're a prosecutor and you're thinking about white collar crime, you always want to start. False statements are a great place to start. If you have a false statement, all you really need to prove is that the person knew that they had the right intent and knowledge, and you're usually off to the races when it comes to a crime. So that's what I'm listening to and what I'm really focused on.
So is there any defense here for Trump? Because you listen to Ronna McDaniel's testimony, and,
sure.
Basically she drew a straight line from John Eastman straight to Donald Trump, that he knew that these elector schemes, he knew about it. He was all in on it. There's no plausible deniability now, but you listen to some of the other statements, it sounds like he was kind of a doddering fool. Like he going on, I need 11,800 votes, but I won by 400,000. Well, if you won by 400,000, why aren't you asking for 400,000?
Right. Look, I think Trump, the problem for any prosecution of Trump is that he's surrounded by these crooked lawyers who are enablers, who tell him exactly what he wants to hear. He's followed around by Rudy Giuliani telling him, yes, there was fraud. Yes, we have the evidence. Yes, we have the proof. He's followed by Eastman, who's telling him, yes, it's constitutional to have the vice president has the constitutional authority to overturn the election. And what Trump's defense is going to be is, I was listening to John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani and others, and I believe that they were giving me sound legal advice, and I was following their legal advice. Now, of course, there's lawyers telling him the exact opposite, but he's going to say, I had numerous lawyers. I believed the advice of John Eastman, and he told me this, and I took him. I trusted his judgment. And people rarely go to prison for following the advice of their lawyers, right? That's hard for prosecutors to overcome.
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor, also host of the On Topic podcast. Make sure you want to check that out. I'm sure one of my favorites, and I'm sure you will like it too. You can get that wherever you get your favorite podcast. So, in looking at this, and there were a lot of moments there that, were just like, jaw dropping. What grabbed your attention out of this hearing? Was it the perfect, beautiful phone call with Raffensperger? Was it Bowers? What grabbed you?
We've talked about a few of them already. I have to say, Rudy Giuliani just bald-faced lying to the Speaker of the Arizona House is really something. He's sitting in on meetings with the White House counsel. They're telling him this is illegal. Here's a little tidbit that you may not have noticed that really jumped out to me as a lawyer. The RNC had a lawyer who clearly recognized that this was a problem and wanted to get the RNC far away from all this, right? At a certain point, once the legal challenges are done, the RNC is like, yeah, we don't want to have any responsibility of this. So like Pontius Pilate washing their hands. This is all on you, Trump. We have no excuse to be assembling these electors. And there's clearly some smart lawyer at the RNC who's like, yeah, we want to put all of this liability onto Trump. We have no excuse to be doing this anymore. Very interesting and really telling. All the smart people around Trump are distancing themselves, are washing their hands of it. And really, it's the fools and the enablers at the very end who stick with them. At the end, at this scheme.
Yeah, what I've been saying is what's interesting to me is you look at the people who were, out there pushing the big conspiracy lie that is stolen in public, showing up to the Four Seasons landscaping facilities. But when they were under oath, whole different kind of scenario. I mean, it's quite remarkable to me how that putting the hand on the book and swearing to tell the truth actually kind of works.
Yeah, I have to say, one thing that everybody's got to give it up for is this committee has actually accomplished quite a bit with this investigation. It's actually, it's in my mind, a testament to what congressional investigations can do. And I think part of the reason that this particular committee was so successful is the Republicans screwed up by boycotting this committee.
Yeah.
I mean, McCarthy totally screwed up by not putting his stooges on the committee. If he had put some people who were there to basically muck up the works, put out distractions, right? We've heard tons of committee hearings, and they were full of Jim Jordan making off-the-wall comments and trying to distract from the real issues. These hearings have been absolutely focused, very informative and insightful and compelling presentations of important factual information, which is frankly what congressional hearings should be.
Yeah, and the thing that gets me is there are no hippie liberal voices. These are all the best people. These are all people who are surrounded by Trump and are surrounding Trump. And again, supposedly the best people who are coming out and saying, look, this is what happened and telling the truth. And this is where I'm believing that there are people paying attention. I know Jim Jordan and others are saying, nobody cares, nobody's paying attention. I think this is going to move the needle pretty substantially on Trump. And there's going to be a moment, I think, where there's going to be a pivot and they throw him under the bus completely.
Well, I will say, no matter what is accomplished, in the courts or something like that, one thing I think this committee has accomplished is I do think there's going to be some movement away from Trump in a primary. At the very least, towards a DeSantis. I'm sure Ron DeSantis and his crew are thrilled. And I also think that there are going to be some Republicans who just want to stay away from shenanigans like this in the future, which is a really good thing for our country because let's face it, this wasn't the first time the Republicans tried to steal an election. And we, I think, should be concerned about it going forward. I think they're trying to do this again, like Judge Ludig mentioned.
No, absolutely. So the question that I've got, and kind of the last line of questioning is, out of this, there are people saying, well, we should be prosecuting the Electoral Act. We should be going after. What are you hoping comes out of this? I mean, is there a chance to heal? Is there a chance to unite the country around maybe we shouldn't do this kind of stuff? Or do you see this ripping us apart even further?
You know what? I would love for there to actually be a bipartisan consensus going forward that the vice president and state legislatures and all this should not be used to get around the fact that we have votes and that ultimately at the end of the day, the people speak. What concerns me, what scares me, Rick, is that in the end, the reason Pence didn't go along with this is because those alternate elector slates were not approved by state legislators. And if state legislatures had gone along with that plan, who knows what would have happened. And so I know everyone wants to look backward and wants to do prosecutions. I'm not against that if the evidence is there. I think that's something that's warranted and should be done if the evidence is there. But I think we have to look forward at the same time. And I am even more worried about the next election.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I said from the beginning there'll be no prosecution of Trump or any of the higher ups. They may get an underling or two, but it's going to be nothing consequential. But on the Pence front, he's someone who should know better. That should have been. I give him no points. I give him no credit. He should have viscerally, at the moment it came, he should have put it down immediately and come out publicly and said so. This flirting around for a month after, gotta go find the Dan Quayle and find a judge and find whoever else, the paper person or the waitress at the diner. Nonsense. He knows as well as anyone that was never never going to fly because he'd been through that process as a congressman a number of times in the past.
Yeah, look, Mike Pence is on Team Pence. He's all about his own politics. He's a politician who's about his own agenda going forward, his own electoral chances, and so on. And from my perspective, what he did on January 6th, certainly I do think he was trying. There was an element to which he wanted to do the right thing, but let's just be real here. He was trying to figure out how to do what he had to do in a way that would have the least fallout for him electorally.
There it is.
And people keep calling for him to testify. Let's face it, if he testified, it would be self-serving BS. That probably would weaken some of the testimony we already had, because if he came out too hard against Trump, it would hurt his chances in the next Republican primary.
Yeah, I say we bring Mother in and ask her. That's where we go. We go that direction. But Renato, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the insight.
Thanks again.
Good stuff. Our good friend Renato Mariotti. Make sure you check out his podcast, the On Topic podcast. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at the work that he does there. Good stuff. Gonna take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. What grabbed your attention in all of this? Was it Bowers? Was it Raffensperger? Or was it the poll workers who talked about the pressure that was put on them? Can you imagine being one of them? Scary stuff. Back after that. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, Herschel Walker seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. Evidently, an old interview has been unearthed where he's talking about his multiple personality disorder, and he thinks that that isn't a mental illness. And the justification is, and this is what he said, quote, "Do our Lord Jesus Christ have a mental illness because he said he's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? To me, those are 3 different personalities." Yeah, so he's comparing himself to the Holy Trinity. That's in my view, that is the sign of a mental illness. And speaking of mental illness, former Representative Steve King, Republican from Iowa, you may remember Steve King, evidently he's got a time on his hands. He said, quote, "I spent Juneteenth all day in the hot sun, hoeing and pulling weeds and thinking about what it would have been like to have been a slave." Now, Steve King's like the whitest guy on the planet. He said, "At the end of the day, I thought about what it would be like to have been an aborted baby. I got to see the sunrise and the sunset." I'm not quite sure what he's trying to get at, but I think he's trying to say he'd rather be a slave. And kind of diminishing the whole, weird. But it is Steve King, so not shocking. Not shocking at all. And speaking about abortion, John Bel Edwards, the governor of Louisiana, the Democratic governor, signed 2 abortion bills into law, banning most abortions in the state and criminalizing providers who do provide abortions. And a lot of Democrats are not thrilled about this. So when Roe goes the way of the past, Louisiana will not be a state where it will be safe and legal. And this, again, is another one of these moments where Democrats have to figure out what they're going to do. And this is where I've been saying for a while. I think Democrats are kind of not sure what direction they need to take. I've been reading a lot of stuff on that they think this is going to be their November issue, and I don't think it's going to affect people just yet. There will be some initial outrage, I think, but I don't think this is going to be the issue people are voting on. For me, it's still the economy, stupid. For me, it's still it's still jobs. It's still that worker stuff that they don't do well, and better figure out how to stop dividing us and unite around the idea of worker-centric organizing. Very simple to me. And Van Jones, I guess, has left CNN, and one of the things that he had talked about is something that I had railed on years ago. Evidently, the Democrats do this, and I've said this about liberals for a very long time. They do segment each other off into groups, and always dividing each other up. Instead of being one giant group, one big movement, we all have to have our segments. And I remember when the term Latinx came up, and I'm going, I don't speak Spanish, but is that actually a word? And I went to the expert, my wife, and then she explained, kind of the theory behind it. And I'm going, I don't know that I agree with it. And I just kind of left it. I also kind of didn't agree with the lumping the Latin community in with the people of color, and evidently they don't like it either. And this is kind of what Van Jones was talking about, that Democrats had better figure out how to do some different messaging, because, well, that division kind of tearing us apart. And for me, the central tenet that I always come back to is, I don't care, your gender. I don't care your race. I don't care your orientation. I don't care. I don't care your issue. For me, the only color that matters is green. The only size that matters is what's in the bank account. And how do we make sure that families have food on the table, a roof over their heads, kids have opportunity of education, and all of the things that will give us chances. For me, that's the way forward. That's the right fight. That's what can bring us together. Not what tears us apart, not what divides us, not what pits us against each other. Look, the other side, the right, they want to use those divisions. We got to stop highlighting those. We've got to be on team us. And I've been saying for a while, we've got to put down our flags and put down our divisions and march together. Find that common ground. We don't always have to agree on every issue. We got to stop with the purity tests. Because look, I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. I'm certainly not going to agree with somebody else's ideology 100% of the time. But on economic issues, this is where we start. When we can push through and deal with problems in a way that it's respectful, that's tolerant, that's open and honest, that's what we should be working towards. Not absolute purity. And certainly not rigid lines. Because we got a lot of fights ahead. There's a lot coming. And the intolerance levels just keep ramping up. And we've got to figure out how we're going to organize each other, how we're going to be part of a community together, how we're going to move this nation forward, not just for ourselves, but for the future, for our kids, for them to have an opportunity. I'm worried. Love to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Remember, grab the podcast wherever you get your favorite ones. That's where you go. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Right before our eyes, an invaluable American species is fast disappearing from view. Cartoonus americanus. These are newspaper cartoonists who've long delighted readers and infuriated power elites. And there's nothing natural about their sudden decline. It's not the result of a dwindling talent pool, and certainly not due to a lack of political targets. Rather, what's happening is that their media habitat is being intentionally destroyed. Around the start of the 20th century, some 2,000 newspapers featured their own full-time cartoonists. But in just the last decade, those healthy media environments have shriveled. So now, only a couple of dozen newspapers have these vibrant artistic journalists on staff. One major reason is that most U.S. papers have been gobbled up by profiteering hedge funds that have merged, purged, and plundered these essential local sources of news and democratic discourse. The overriding interest of these Wall Street owners is to cash out a paper's financial assets and haul off the booty to boost their personal wealth. Journalism and democracy be damned. Thus, they view cartoonists as a paycheck that can be easily diverted into their corporate pockets, dismissing the fact that enjoying good local cartoonists ranks as one of the top reasons people give for buying the paper. Note that this mass extermination is not old-school media censorship, but sleight-of-hand money censorship by the new monopolistic order of newspapering. Political cartoonists are still free to express any opinion they want, but the Wall Street system locks them out of their primary marketplace. Censorship is ugly, but eliminating paychecks, well, that's just business. This is Jim Hightower saying, yet these freewheeling spirits of the cartooning craft are inventing new ways to connect with America's strong demand for their fun and important work. To connect with them, go to editorialcartoonist.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So last week we spent a little time in Philadelphia at the AFL-CIO's convention, and out of that, like we talked about, historic new leadership. You have Liz Shuler, the first female president of the organization, and Fred Redmond, the first African-American secretary-treasurer. Historic, yes, but the call for organizing 1 million new members has some excited, has some underwhelmed. And as we talked yesterday with Harold Meyerson about his piece, could this be the moment that maybe you need to envision different models, something new? Well, we'll see. I'm excited about the fact that they're talking about organizing. And I know 1 million people over 10 years, That doesn't sound like a lot. So here's an idea. How about doing that in the first year and then set a new goal? Just a thought. And here to share some thoughts on the convention and the call to organize, I've asked Jimmy Williams Jr. to come talk with us. Jimmy's the general president of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Their website, iupat.org, if you want to check out the incredible work they do. Jimmy, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the big convention, historic in nature. General thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great week. Coming off of a pandemic where, we haven't had those types of gatherings for really almost 2 years, if not longer. The general sense of solidarity in the room and having people together is great. And the historic nature of Liz and Fred's election was definitely a different vibe than in years past, and in a number of instances. And having a newly crowned leader at the top of the AFL-CIO, it's an exciting time period. It was an exciting week.
And now, one of the things that, again, coming out of this call for organizing in this moment, as the approval ratings for unions have never been higher. You've got a younger generation that is calling for more unionization. It seems like a return to the roots of the AFL-CIO and the organizing model that Liz Shuler is proposing. I'm curious your general assessment of what she's put forth.
Well, number one, I think it's great that Liz makes the centerpiece of her leadership organizing first and foremost. Secondly, I've heard some people talk about as the goal, underwhelming, overwhelming. Look, the federation itself, needs the affiliates to organize. All of us that are affiliates of the AFL-CIO have a duty to do that. I'm an organizer. I was the organizing director of our union for the last 10 years before becoming president. And I think by Liz, putting out there a marker, like you said, what's to say we can't beat that in 2 years, a year? At least it's being talked about as the primary thing that our movement needs to work on to capitalize on the moment. And her creativity in saying, and challenging us really as leaders of organizations to get together and come up with new forms of representation for different industries that are trying to organize. That's what it's all about,
Now, it's interesting you bring this up because, new industries trying to organize. I mean, we saw Apple has we got an iUnion now, the first store to vote for a union. New industries that traditionally people haven't thought of, and new ways of possibly doing this. So it then begins to beg the question, what is organizing? Are we defining organizing differently than maybe my generation did, which were, hey, you file an NLRB election, you win that election, you go to contract and go. Is there a difference now in what organizing is? I'm curious where your mindset is.
There has to be all options on the table. Like in our industry, in the construction industry, we have, quite frankly, over, 1 million, if not more, workers that don't even have access to NLRB protections because they're misclassified as independent employers. We need to figure out a way to organize those workers where they can collectively bargain, absent any major drastic labor law reform. And that's just my little piece of the construction industry. So, yeah, we do have to look at what does representation mean into the future, because employment's different these days. And it's funny you bring up the Apple workers. I mean, the machinists are the one who are organizing them, and all of our unions have to take a look at these industries and come up with creative tools. And I think that's what Liz is trying to accomplish by saying, let's put everybody in the room and let's come up with our plan to organize together as a federation.
Because, especially when you're talking about the gig workers, because I don't see that it's going away anytime soon, because this is where I think the number I saw recently, 42% of people work in a gig kind of environment where, outside of traditional employment, there's got to be a way to organize those folks to make better jobs, better wages, better hours, better conditions, because we know, and I know a lot of gig workers who sadly, they're getting screwed over.
Rick, I could tell you in our industry, we are looking at a company called PPG, which is a big multinational corporation that has always been a paint manufacturer based in Pittsburgh. They're enormous. They're all over the globe, publicly traded. They're launching an app and have launched an app where you could go online, put the dimensions of a building in, and they'll spit out a number, and they'll get you the labor to paint the project. But that's dangerous, right? We had numerous meetings at the AFL-CIO convention with other unions, non-traditional building trades relationships with the steelworkers, machinists, and said, let's go after them together. We have to organize their company as a whole. And that's exciting stuff that hasn't happened enough in our movement over the last 25, 30 years.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Jimmy Williams, Jr., General President of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Make sure you check out their website, iupat.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at this. Now, you bring up an interesting point because, this idea that, we're all in this, in the same Shark Tank, if you will, all united, all one movement. But I'll tell you, in the convention hall, where the exhibitors were, one of my pet peeves is you have every different segment of, this group, that group, all with their different, kind of directions. For me, the labor movement is the place where it doesn't matter, male, female, black, white, gay, straight. It's about the job. It's about better wages, hours, conditions. It's about worker power instead of those divisions. And I'm hoping at some point we move in that direction. Do you see that happening?
Well, I think we have to strengthen our movement, and that requires, folks that know their industries to organize. And look, it's on the affiliates to organize. However, when we build a stronger labor movement, absolutely, that should be the goal of the federation, is to unite and bring everybody together. And, it's difficult when you have, different concerns by sector too. And, listen, I would never want Liz Schuler's job.
No.
Personally, because trying to pull together 54, 55 different organizations with all their different histories, I really believe that by her saying and setting a challenge to all of our affiliates to step up and do it is the right way to lead our movement into that future, to reach that goal of true working class solidarity that has, multiracial, different age groups, different genders, like that. Ultimately, that's the goal. But it requires some heavy lifting and heavy organizing by each and every affiliate of the federation.
Yeah.
No, but we still have 5 or 6 unions, big unions, that aren't even members of the federation.
No, we're in a moment where sadly still divided, and this is one of those moments where the reality is those who want to destroy what is left of the labor movement, there's fertile ground.
Absolutely, and we always got to keep that in mind. That they're there, they're nipping at our heels, and as the world is changing around us, we got to be nimble and we got to be quick. I'm excited to see what comes of this. I really am, and how the AFL-CIO can play a role in just bringing us into a modern labor movement.
Now, we look around and we see victories, Starbucks, a lot of NLRB victories. We see the one at Amazon, at the JFK 8 with the ALU. We see a lot of good signs. I'm still worried that there aren't contracts yet, and you've got Howard Schultz at the head of Starbucks saying he's never gonna deal with the workers there. For me, the idea of building from the bottom up this kind of grassroots worker power beyond the NLRB process is something that I don't think we talk enough about.
Right.
It's for me, it's about more than just what kind of service contract can you get. It's about building that generational power that I want to see, that my grandparents' generation had, that swagger that they had, that it didn't matter if you had a contract, that they were making conditions better anyway. Do you see that as something possible, or do you see organizing defined differently?
No, Rick, I think it's possible. It happened before. It just requires the labor movement to work on it, right? Like you said, a contract fight is just as hard as winning an NLRB election, if not harder. I mean, you have a CEO of a Fortune 500 company basically committing an unfair labor practice and doesn't care. There's disregard for what worker power is. And in order for corporations and in order for employers to see that workers do have power, it's going to require things like, formulating strikes and withholding labor, and showing workers that they do have the power outside of just a contract. I remember it was maybe about a couple months before the pandemic, and we were fighting for immigration reform, and there was something called a day without immigrants, right? What if one day just 17 million immigrant workers just walked off the job sites? You think they would show their power? I think they would.
Yeah.
No,
and this is where having those conversations and unions, once again, look, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a time where I remember unions having a place in the community and being the center of the community. And I remember stories of, people being married in union halls and people's life events were there. And for me, unions were more about community as well as better wages, hours, conditions. Absolutely. Growing up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, you saw people's lives get better when they got those union jobs, but it was also being part of the community that I think is important. And I think that's the key component missing in our society today, and why I'm so excited about potentially the future and hopeful for the future.
Listen, I agree with you, and I'm hopeful for the future too, but it's hard work, and it's up to the labor movement to put their money where their mouth is and to put their resources where it needs to go to build that type of worker power. You don't just make statements and have workers put themselves at risk. It's long conversations, and I could see a future where, we would be able to do mass job actions in order to make social change. But man, we got to build that power. We have to spend the effort in organizing workers, not just making claims. And I think that's what Liz knows needs to be done here, which is let's get in the room and strategize.
And get out in the streets and talk to people. Ultimately, what's happened over the last 40 years in my entire working life has been we've been told that we're individuals. Hooray for me and the hell with everybody else. The one who dies with the most toys wins. Greed is good. We've been told that we're individuals. We're not part of a community. And what I'm saying is the reality is we are part of a community, and we do better when the community does better. And this is the message, I think, forward for the labor movement and for society as a whole, which is why I think we're at such a divisive moment in our country, is because we're not part of that community.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, look, we have to find the issues that will unite across political and social, spectrums. Like right now, I could tell you both Republicans and Democrats are upset with inflation. Well, just imagine, if the workers of this country said, I'm not going to work for my dirt wages anymore because I can't even put gas in my car, and walked off the job sites and withheld their labor until they got a raise.
Yep.
That's not a contract. That's getting a raise. That's building worker power. I mean, we have to find those issues that unite us as working people, and we got to stick to them, and we got to organize around them. And it's always wages, working conditions, and a better future. It always is. That wins. That cuts across any belief.
No, I'm right there with you. So is that Liz Shuler's first marching order? Don't go to work tomorrow until we get a raise to fight off inflation?
I mean, I don't think Liz can do that herself. I think Liz's call is put the organizers out there in the street to start building towards that.
Yeah. No, that's the place where we want to get to, and I'm right there with you.
Yep.
You've got to do the hard work, the grassroots work of letting people know that they can and they should and they must. I'm right there with you. Last question I've got for you. I want to go back to the convention. Again, historic. It was what it was. Outside of the organizing push, what else did you take from it?
Well, I just, number one, seeing a united movement, which is not always the case, which is good. I thought, displaying, and I understood your point about sectors being carved apart, but I thought displaying the work that our members do and the new technology that is coming out in all of our sectors, I thought that was pretty exciting.
I talked to the bricklayer. I talked to the president of the bricklayers, and I said, you know what? You had that 30 years ago when I was looking for a job. I may have been a bricklayer.
and it's different. There's like in our trades, the technology is, we had virtual reality, training equipment there, and got to show what our members do, which was exciting. And these 2 points do kind of tie together, Rick. Technology has impacted the traditional working class, and things are changing around us. And that's why it's more important that we look at every sector of the economy. I look at our own union. We have attrition sometimes just based on technology.
Yeah.
I worked on a job site that my grandfather built with 40 other, I was a glass installer, 40 other glazers when it was built. My dad redid it with 20. I did it with 10. And that's 3 generations of folks that went from 40 jobs to 20 to 10 in a highly unionized sector. So I thought it was interesting to see all the different technology that's out there, and also think about how do we organize the future.
Yeah. No, I had talked about it extensively during the week, saying, look, the labor movement gets labeled with the Luddite label quite often, but they were on the front edge, the cutting edge of technology to help their members do the job better, more efficiently, and more cost effectively to make sure that they keep those jobs. I'm all in favor of it.
Yeah.
Smart stuff. But Jimmy, I appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to the days ahead. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts as you organize the future.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Jimmy Williams, Jr., General President of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Make sure you check out their website, iupat.org. We'll get links out on social media. I can take a look at that. We'll take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. Remember, if you're just joining us or you missed any of the show, grab the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. I know we're there. Also, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. Email me, Rick@thericksmithshow.com. ricksmithshow.com. So, listening to Jimmy Williams, I'm hopeful, and I say this all the time, kind of hopeful that the future is going to be organized. But what does that mean? Does that just mean winning a couple of NLRB elections and then having a long slog fight over workers getting contracts and win some, lose some? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Or is this about building true grassroots organized power where people actually and I say this all the time, I've been very fortunate in my work life that I've always felt empowered in the workplace. And that empowerment has gone not just in the workplace, but into society as a whole. That I expect my government to do the things that we need to get done. I expect my elected leaders to, do what they say they're going to do. And then we hold them accountable, and we want to hold them accountable. So when I'm looking at this organizing model, I'm going, okay, I like what I'm hearing. I like that you're going to go out and you're going to empower people to fight for better wages, hours, conditions, for better communities, better education, better schools, better. The old Gompers quote, what does labor want? More. More of the things that make life worth living. More opportunities for our children, more opportunities for ourselves. More. And a lot of people look at that, no, you're greedy. No. It isn't about just wealth. It's about opportunity. It's about a standard of living. It's what my grandparents understood. It wasn't just about the cash in their pockets. It was about time with their kids. It was about the ability to take vacations. It was about the ability to save for retirement. It was about the ability to send their kids to college and all kinds of things. It was much more than just wages, greed. And for the last 40 years, we've been trained in this mindset of it's just about greed. It's just about more. I want more. Instead of thinking about, hey, and this younger generations, they're demanding better opportunities. They're demanding different. And employers are going to have to adjust. And one of the things that's always been frustrating to me, and this is, again, the wealth classes understood how to use division masterfully. Union organizing doesn't have to be adversarial. Because look, every company I've worked for, I've always wanted them to do well. Always want them to make wild amounts of profit. Want them to be very productive. I want them to do well. Why? Why, Rick? Why would you want them to be productive? Well, simple. I want them to be around. Need a job. All of my coworkers need jobs. And, come time to sit down for the next contract negotiation, I want them profitable so that I can demand part of that profit. I can demand part of the better things that we want. Better wages, better health care, more vacation time, more sick time, more opportunities, advancement, whatever that's going to be. You get that more from a profitable company than you do the one that's sinking. And we want profitable companies. We want good actors. We want partners. It's the anti-union crowd that keeps pushing this. No, unions are bad. Unions just want to put companies out of business. They just want to fight. They protect the lazy. No, they don't. But again, you keep getting that message repeated to you over and over and over again. It becomes the narrative. It becomes what you believe when it's not reality. And as I've said, the hope is out of this convention, and the hope is, as Jimmy Williams was saying, that this moment they begin to do that hard work of community organizing that they haven't done for a very long time because they got stuck in this, hey, we got to win NLRB elections because this is the model. That's it's that kind of that framework. Got to win elections. No, it's about building from the ground up. It's about what is real organizing. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you in? Something you're interested in? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, if you missed any of the program, make sure you download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.